On today's episode of Big Time, the podcast, brought to you by the Landscape Supply Center, our boys, the Russo brothers out there in Herman, Maine, the boys with the toys. We're going to Madtown again this week for this week's episode with Myles Morneault, standout athlete from the mid-2000s, all kinds of great stuff on this week's episode of Big Time, the podcast. Man, let's go.
I'm on my way, I'm making it. Big time. Big time. I got to make it show, yeah. Big time.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another round of the podcast. We're calling Big Time the podcast. We're taking a journey through Madawaska today. We're going to talk owl pride today. We got he was the best athlete during my era when I was going through high school. Myles Morneault from Madawaska on the phone with us today on Big Time. Myles, how's it going?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we're calling you on a landline. You had mentioned reception. So are you out in the middle of nowhere? Where you're out in New Hampshire, right?
I'm in northern New Hampshire, yeah.
Up in the mountains?
Cell service. Up in the White Mountains,
Yep. So we'll get into that a little bit later on in terms of what brought you out there, what you're doing now. But we're just going to start from the beginning and take it right from the very top. We're going to take it back to the early days. Madawaska, born and raised, correct?
Yep, born and raised. Grew up there, moved around a couple houses, but stayed right in town.
So you were, it's called the Avenues in Madawaska, correct? That's what you guys have.
Yeah. Well, when I grew up on Park Street, which was, in that day and age, it was a street where just not far from the high school, and there was a ton of kids on that street. But nowadays, it's kind of like the slums of Madawaska.
So you mentioned a lot of kids, kind of like where you were growing up. Was it like a lot of like neighborhood type? We won't call it gangs, but the kids in your neighborhood, you guys kind of hung out together, and then kids in other neighborhoods hung out together, that type of deal?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the street that I grew up on, there wasn't much traffic on it, so, I mean, we'd have wiffle ball games and kickball games and stuff like that. Just all the neighborhood kids coming through, and when it was time for dinner, we'd hear the call that it was time for dinner, and we'd all go home and then come back right out until the sun went down.
You have any brothers or sisters?
Yeah, I got two older sisters and a younger adopted brother.
Got you. And were any of them athletes as well, or were you the only athlete in the family?
No, they all played soccer and basketball. My sisters did. They were pretty good. They weren't as competitive as I was, probably, so they never kind of pursued it past high school.
What was the age gap between you and your sisters?
So my oldest sister is, she's 3 years older than me, and then I'm like a year, 15 months maybe younger than my other sister.
All right, so I'm guessing you spent a lot of time as a kid traveling around, watching them play, going to games, just being around it, I'm guessing.
Yeah, actually, my mother used to coach middle school girls back when I was like, even before like kindergarten. And she did that for a while. She coached middle school girls, and so I used to go to their practices and at the end of practices run with them a little bit. That's kind of like where I first got into the basketball scene.
And what about soccer? Where's soccer come from? Is that just something that everyone did and you just kind of played too? Or
Yeah, I don't know where exactly that came in, but I think it was probably the rec department. We used to have like the summer rec, and you could go and you could choose just pretty much whatever activities you wanted to do, and then you did that for the whole summer, and that's probably where I started with that.
So let's talk about growing up in Madawaska here, because obviously the town is not what it once was, just like a lot of the towns up there are not like they once were, just population going down and getting more and more difficult. But I'm guessing you came up at still a good time, though. The town was still popping, still a pretty good population, all kinds of things to do. What were some of the other things you were into as a kid besides the summer sports? What else was there in Madtown?
Oh, when I was really young, we had a town pool, so that was kind of big. And then that was right next to the rec department, and then that shut down. And geez, there wasn't much else. We used to camp a lot when I was a kid. We'd go camping. We'd even just go right across the border to Edmundston and camp out there for a couple weeks during the summer.
I was going to say,
We usually had
didn't Edmundston have a pool too?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, at the Lions Park, they had a pool there. I think they might still. I'm not sure.
Because I remember
They used to have a pool there.
yeah, I remember it was a thing. Like people used to go out there and there was like a high dive. Didn't they have like an indoor pool as well?
That was the indoor pool. That was at the complex in Edmundston.
Gotcha.
So they had we did swimming lessons over there as well too.
Yes,
But,
you guys had that advantage over us. Like in Fort Kent, we didn't have anything in Clare except for Maple Leaf. You guys had all kinds of other opportunities across the border in Edmundston.
yeah, and it worked out pretty well because our rec department kind of had a good relationship with them, and so everything was kind of funneled through the rec department. So everything that we wanted to use over there, it was through the rec department, so we got it at a cheaper rate.
Did you play any? I forget what it's even called. Just like youth hockey, pee wee hockey.
No,
Maybe
I never played. I never got into hockey. There was a little bit of a program in Madawaska, but like when I was growing up, when I got a little bit older, it kind of petered out, and anyone who really wanted to play like seriously would find a team in Canada, and there weren't many. I think I had one buddy that played in Canada, but other than that, it wasn't big.
Did you go watch any of the hockey games over in Edmundston? Isn't there like a semi-pro team or something like that?
Yeah, there is. I forget what they're called now, but I've heard about them. My nephews go to a few games a year, and they love it. It's quite the atmosphere here.
Because I remember there was a team, not in Clare, but the next town over, I think there was one. And like it was a pretty crazy environment. Like those Canadians do love their hockey, and it was actually fun to go to and go check it out.
Yeah, it's cool. There was before they tore down the Forum in Canada, they used to have like semi-pro team, like one there, one in like St. Basile, and we used to go to those games in high school. And those got pretty intense too. But then they tore it down. They built a whole new venue, and now they got some new team there.
So along with the athletic opportunities you had right there at Edmundston, a lot better social life too, even as a kid. All kinds of different festivals, just different things going on. Was it Jazz in the Park? I think it was one of them. What were some of the different things they had over there growing up that I'm guessing you just go over there, hang out, be outside, have a good time?
Yeah, so definitely when I got older, they had the Jazz Festival, which was kind of like right when you cross the border in Madawaska. And they had the Flabbergan, which was like a bigger festival, kind of like the Acadian Festival in Madawaska, but it was a little bit bigger and more a little more well attended. But growing up, there wasn't too much other than, like I said, we used to go camping quite a bit right across the border, and we'd go to the pool at the complex, but other than that, there wasn't too much else going on, or not much that we ventured out to go see.
Right. And you were lucky because the age group, even the age group right before you, and I'm guessing even the age group before you, like there was a sustained period of just really good soccer teams and basketball teams. You get to watch a lot of really good players come through it before you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think definitely a few years before I got into high school, there was, I would say that it was probably a little bit better competition, a little more talented group of individuals, like Coop and Ben Marshall. Those guys were all probably 5-6 years ahead of me.
Who were some of the kids that you came up with that were in your age group, starting young and kind of stuck with you through middle school and eventually got to high school together? Who were some of the guys you came up with?
So for basketball, actually, I think I was pretty much, there was only a couple other guys in basketball in my grade that played, but nothing like really serious. So soccer was a little bit more, there was a little bit more interest in that. So like Mikey Arnold, Justin Lagasse, Paul Michaud, those guys were started pretty young, like in the rec league together, and then kind of came up through the middle school program.
So who or what age did you guys start playing some of the surrounding towns? Like, obviously didn't play Fort Kent or anything until high school, but did you guys travel at all in middle school playing like Van Buren, Wisdom, some of these other surrounding towns?
Yeah, I can remember soccer. We played through the rec again. We played like we would play like Wisdom teams. We'd play Woodland, some Caribou teams. Basketball, that was probably a little bit later on. I don't remember. We used to play, so we had a league in Madawaska. It was like, you'd have like grades, each grade would have their own league, and you'd have grade, so you'd have like 3 teams from 3rd grade, 3 from 4th grade, 3 from 5th grade, and you'd have, everyone was a different NBA team.
Oh yeah.
And it was usually just parents that were coaching, and you'd have like one game night every week where you played like the 2 other teams that were in your age group. And so that was kind of probably when I first really got introduced to like the team aspect of basketball. I would say I probably got into soccer a little bit earlier, like with the rec, and able to kind of play up a little bit with some older kids, which I think really benefited me a lot in growing my game and kind of getting me a little bit further ahead. So when it came time to playing against kids my own age.
Right. So came into Madawaska High School in 2001, would have been your freshman year, right?
Yeah, so graduated in 05, so yeah, because it was 2001.
And what kind of team were you coming into as a freshman? Did you make varsity right away? We'll kind of split it up. We'll do soccer, then we'll go through basketball afterwards. But coming in as a freshman, were you looking to make varsity? Did you make varsity? What was your first experience once you got to high school?
Yeah, I remember my last middle school soccer game, and so also I had played a ton of Dutch. I'd been to a ton of Dutch soccer academy. Had Robbie Krul, who was this Dutch guy who came to Caribou, Maine, and started this soccer academy, and he toured the valley and other parts of northern Maine with his soccer camp. And so I got really interested then. And when it came time to middle school, I want to say I think we still had like an A team and a B team then. Robert Plord was our coach then. He was from Fort Kent. And so he was coaching us then, and I started as a 6th grader and was doing pretty well. And when I got into 8th grade, and I just got to the point where I was kind of done and over with middle school soccer, and I couldn't really wait to get up to high school. And so I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't thinking that I was going to make varsity my freshman year. And I did. I made varsity, and the coach then was Vince Vanier. He was also the baseball coach at the time too. And so I made varsity, but he told me, he's like, I want you to get more playing time, this and that. And so he also had me play some JV games whenever it like didn't interfere with any of our varsity games. So I was kind of not turned off, but it kind of disappointed me. I just wanted to play varsity, and I was starting on varsity, so he actually really made me swing. But that was kind of a transition. It was kind of difficult because I was definitely not looked down on, but I could definitely feel kind of people staring, other guys on the team kind of staring at me in my back, kind of like thinking to themselves, like, what the heck is this doing? And so it was kind of a difficult transition because I was now the low man on the totem pole, even though I was starting on the varsity team.
What kind of team did you guys have your freshman year? Because Madawaska's got a great history of good soccer teams. Were you guys pretty loaded your freshman year?
We got Ben Sidua as our coach, who I think now is the superintendent in Fort Kent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he came in and he had like a whole different mentality on the game of soccer and how it was supposed to be played. It was none of this kick and run crap, and it was all small triangle passing type stuff, and it was kind of a breath of fresh air. He gave us he kind of changed the whole mentality of how soccer was supposed to be played, and it really shaped the program for quite some time. I haven't seen any games recently in the past couple of years, but I know when I came in and for a while after that, the game had kind of changed, and it was good. My sophomore year, I had transitioned, I think, to more of a midfielder, where when I was a freshman, I was kind of playing up front as a striker, and so I had a little bit more confidence coming in as a sophomore, and I kind of took well to the way that Ben wanted us to play in terms of the small passing, triangle passing, because I had done a ton of the Dutch camps, and that's kind of the way that they were teaching things, and so it worked out well.
One thing I haven't asked anybody that I've had on so far about is I don't even know if you guys played in it, but Presque Isle would throw like a preseason tournament every year in August. Did Madawaska go to that tournament at all?
Yeah, we did. We would go there. Yeah.
What was that like? Because I felt like that was like it's kind of like the way us basketball players fondly remember the Twin River Classic we used to have in Fort Kent. We would just have great memories about it. But I remember like when Charles was going through and he was playing, they go out to Presque Isle every year. And it was just a very, very fun tournament to go watch. And the guys all liked it. They played against teams that they not normally would play against in the regular season. And it was just a good kickoff tournament and something fun to do.
Yeah, it was. It kind of gave you an idea of how your season was going to go, how prepared for your season you were going to be. Just because, like you said, you saw some different teams that you may not be playing in the regular season. We saw teams like Caribou and Presque Isle that my first couple of years in high school, I don't even think they were on the schedule. Just because they were really good, and we were still kind of building up a program. And so it wasn't until like my junior, senior year that we really started playing. We played teams with a little bit higher caliber player, and so that tournament kind of really gave you a good idea of where you were at as a team, and some of the things you needed to work on before you met some of your opponents that you'd play during the regular season.
So, Class C school, Madawaska, you guys played it predominantly. I'm guessing, except for Fort Kent, a whole Class D and Class C schedule for the most part, right?
Yep.
What were? Yeah, go ahead.
When were you guys B?
We were B. 2005 was the last year we were B. We dropped to C the year after I graduated.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. Other than that, we played all C and D schools, except we played Caribou. They were B. I don't think we ever played Presque Isle. They were A for a couple of years when we were in school. So
yeah.
I don't think we ever played Presque Isle. So yeah, I think we played like Holton, Fort Fairfield, Limestone, Van Buren, Wisdom. Yeah, so when it came time for tournament time, it was kind of a shock when you play some of the Southern teams, where all these kids are playing on like club teams and things like that throughout the off season.
So we'll get to the rivalry games in a little bit, but give me some of the schools that just matched up well against you guys when you're going through, like your junior and senior year. Besides like the Van Buren Fort Kent games, like what were some of the teams you had the biggest battles with, or maybe just the games that you look forward to the most, or looked forward to the most in terms of a matchup?
Yeah, so obviously Fort Kent and Van Buren, we always kind of played up for those games. The crowds were always bigger, and the rivalries were bigger. But I would say Holton was another big school. My senior year, we had a couple close games against them, and they got kind of testy.
Speaking of testy here, I want to know about the Van Buren Fort Kent game. So I had Andy Martin on last week, and he was telling me about the battles that you guys used to have, Madawaska and Fort Kent. Or not Madawaska and Fort Kent, but Madawaska Van Buren. What were the rivalry games like? What was the tell me the difference between going to Van Buren and playing at Van Buren versus going to Fort Kent and playing at Fort Kent when it came to rivalry games?
I definitely think Fort Kent was the bigger rivalry game for me, in my opinion. Van Buren, for some reason, they were always good, but you didn't expect them to be good. They always had a 7 and ended up playing for them. And they for however reason, they were always good, but we could never. It was never like I never got up for a Van Buren game like I did for Fort Kent. Like Fort Kent Madawaska was definitely, in my eyes, the bigger rivalry. But Van Buren games got pretty rowdy as well, and I mean their fans can be pretty crazy at times, and they're super opinionated. And it can get kind of intense over there. It's a little bit smaller gym. Like our gym, we have the two sides, so the fans are kind of separated. But it was. I don't think it ever got as big as. Like I remember senior year against Fort Kent at home. It was a senior night. Like that was a huge game. There was like standing room only. People lined the walls on the side of the gym. Like that was, I'll never forget that game. Like that game was just an intense game. It was obviously you probably remember that we won that game.
That's my most disappointing loss from high school. That's the one I still hate the most. The one that we lost.
That came down to the end too. I remember the last play of the game. I had an in-ball. It was a full court. I was trying to get it to the other end of the court, and I threw it like a baseball pass. And we had this low-hanging thing from the middle of the gym that was like like we had a barrier that could split the gym in two. And I threw a baseball pass in, and it hit that stupid barrier, and you guys got the ball back with like seconds left in the game, and we were up.
Yeah. And I shot a 3 in the corner, and I missed the 3, and you guys got the board, and that was the ball game. I remember that game. I remember it really well.
I honestly never forget that. The crowd was just like ridiculous.
Yeah, and that was.
I remember going back. I remember going back like 2 years later, and it was a Madawaska Fort Kent game, and there was like 6 fans on the Fort Kent side and like 10 fans on the Madawaska side, and I was like, how things have changed.
Yeah, that was the only game I can remember where it was like that the entire time I was in high school. Because we'll get into basketball here in a little bit, but like I just remember that being the one time where like it was packed and it was intense and the fans were rowdy and it was just a crazy atmosphere. It was could have been remembered a little bit better if we would have won, but still one of those games that I think about. But we'll get back to basketball in a little bit here. We'll put a bow on soccer here. So talk to me about Fort Kent on the soccer field. Like, is there anyone that you like to match up against, or was there anyone who just got on your nerve who you look forward to playing? Anyone that just got under your skin? You can name names. It's okay. We're here to air it out. This is what we're here for in big time.
Yeah. See, I tended to kind of leave all that out. I know, like, I remember the guys like Carson Hartman and like Derek Plord and those guys, but I'm trying to. There was always a Karen on the team that was trying to elbow me or kind of get under my skin. I'm trying to think of anyone else that. The biggest thing I remember from playing Fort Kent soccer is they always had AC/DC Thunderstruck in their warm-up mix.
That's a staple for Fort Kent soccer. Right
Yeah, it was a massive staple. But those games were intense too. Like the crowds would be lining the field, like massive crowds, and every game ended up being a close game. I remember, I think it was my senior year, under the lights at home, and we played Fort Kent. And that game, Fort Kent ended up beating us. And that was a heartbreaker because I want to say we lost like 3-1 or something like that. It was just bad. For whatever reason, my senior year was a bad year. We snuck into the playoffs my senior year. Our last game of the season, we played Van Buren in Van Buren, and we had to win in order to like really solidify that we were going to be in the playoffs. We had to win. We ended up losing 2-1, and I was like, "That's it. That's my high school career. I'm going to lose to Van Buren, and then and that's it. We're done. We're not even going to make the playoffs." For whatever reason, the right teams lost and the right teams won. We snuck in as a 10 seed.
Oof.
So we're playing on the road. We're going down to places like Piscataquis, Dexter, and we're picking off like the 1 seed, 2 seed, 3 seed, 4 seed. We're like smoking them. Like we went down to Piscataquis and won 4-0, and I think they were a 2 seed then. And so we were like, wow, I think we may have something here. And but it was always that Van Buren game that could have broke it for us. And we ended up that year we lost in the state championship. We played, I can't even remember the team now. I can't even remember, but we were I think it started with a C. It wasn't Calais, but it was, I can't think of it. They came out like firing on us. Like we took a 4-hour bus ride. But the thing that pissed us off the most was that the ref for the game was Van Buren's principal.
Ooh.
Yeah. And so we're like, what the heck is going on here? How is he getting a Class C game with like Madawaska in the championship in the state final? And so we started the game. They came out firing. They had one kid on their team. I don't even remember his name, but he was just their stud. And he came out and he probably hit like a shot from, I would say, a good 30 yards out. And it hit the crossbar, bounced down. It went in and crossed the line, but they didn't. It like crossed the line and then came out, and our goalie grabbed it. And they didn't allow the goal, so we were still tied 0-0. And they scored right before halftime again, and the goal counted. So we were down 1-0 at half, and we ended up. Mikey Arnold hit a indirect kick from like half, and I was standing on the 18, and I just kind of skipped it over my head. It like barely hit me, and it literally like trickled right into the lower corner of the goal. So we tied with like 8 minutes left in regulation of the state final. I like ran to the sidelines. I did like a Superman round off, or I did like a round off, and I ended up, I was like so ecstatic that I like over rotated and almost landed like on my stomach face first, Superman style. And so we ended up going into overtime. I don't know what the ruling was, but for some reason, we played 4 overtimes, or we were going to play 4 overtimes before we got into PKs. So we went through 2 overtimes, 5-minute overtimes, and there was still no score. And then we get to the 3rd overtime, and the kid that had never scored a goal all season scored the winning goal and beat us in the state championship.
That's a tough way to go.
I'll never forget that. That's for sure. I got a national championship, and I'll never forget that missed chance to have a state championship.
Yeah. You don't remember who it was who you guys played against? We'll have to go look it up.
Yeah. It started with a C. I think it was like I don't know why I think Carabasset, but it wasn't Carabasset. It was oh man, I can't. They had green jerseys. I remember that. I can't remember their stupid name.
We'll get the research department on it. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So not a bad little journey though to end the soccer career, getting all the way to the state championship. Basketball not as successful. Didn't get it to a state championship, and
No.
actually for most of the time, kind of struggled a little bit. Safe to say.
Yeah, big time. I mean, I'll be the first one to say basketball was just. I played basketball. I didn't practice basketball. I wasn't. My one love in high school was soccer, and so I could play basketball just because it was something to do in the winter.
And so.
Get by.
And so freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, teams weren't really good. And then for some reason out of nowhere, your senior year, you guys just kind of came out of nowhere and had a really, really good team.
Yeah, so, I mean, it wasn't for the lack of coaching. I mean, we had Matt Rosial as our coach, who was an unreal coach, an unreal player, and just an unreal guy. When I came up, my freshman year, I was not expecting to make varsity, let alone start on the varsity team. And so he had quite a bit of faith in me as a freshman point guard who really just played because I liked the game and I was competitive and athletic enough to be able to play. And I made the varsity team. I wasn't even swinging. And then he had me starting. The only game I didn't start was the first game my freshman year, and that was against Fort Kent in Fort Kent. And he told us the starting lineup, and then game started. Sit next to me, and so he looked at me and said, "You know why you're not starting?" And I looked at him because I was kind of puzzled. I wasn't expecting to start in the first place. And I was like, "No, coach, why?" He's like, "I remember my first game and all the nerves that were coming in when I wanted to get out there, and it's a different game, a different league, and so I didn't want you to have all those that kind of hesitation and all those kind of jitters going in to start as a freshman, and so we'll let the game get going a little bit and then get you in there." And so I thought that was pretty neat, and I respected that. And like I said, I wasn't even expecting to be starting. So to start as a freshman, I mean, there was some good teams all around, and I was some scrawny little freshman kid. I probably weighed 150, 160 pounds soaking wet. And, I mean, my handles weren't really anything to write home about, but he had a lot of faith in me. And, I mean, I didn't do horrible, but I learned a heck of a lot. And I think that was the biggest thing he wanted, is he saw potential and wanted me to kind of get the experience and the learning experience to be able to kind of help lead the team a couple of years down the road.
And it all came to a head your senior year. You, Alan Campbell, the Sittawa twins. Who else was on there? Dom.
No, I never played with Dom.
I thought Dom was there your senior year. I thought that was like the one that was his first year he transferred there.
No, he came the year after that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he came the year after. It was me, Alan, the Sidwa twins, and then this kid Josh Pelletier, who's
Yes.
a tall, lanky kid.
I got a
Yep.
question. I got a question for you, real quick.
Yeah.
Who told Alan Campbell it was okay to rock the headband?
It wasn't me. It was not me.
But
No.
yeah, but that team you guys kind of came out of nowhere. So I mean, I'm guessing it had been a while since Madawaska had been to the tournament. Probably Clavette maybe was maybe the last time prior to that. So maybe like 4 years.
I don't even know if I don't even remember them doing it.
They got there at least once. I remember talking to them, and they got there at least once.
They did.
Yeah.
Okay, because the runs I remember going down in '93 and seeing like Pete Clavette,
Yeah.
Joey Canan, those guys play at the auditorium, and then the year it must have been like 2000 when like Christine Sear was there, Kay Gerard,
Yeah.
when the girls made it to the tournament. I don't remember ever going down and seeing like Andrew Clavette and those guys, but yeah, they probably did. I mean, they had some good players.
So speaking of
But
Andrew,
yeah, we had. Yeah, go ahead.
speaking of Andrew Clavette, he rocked number 21. I believe you rocked number 21 as
Yeah.
well, right?
Yeah, that was definitely a thought process behind that. I knew both soccer and basketball. Soccer I was 11, and that was another popular number. But in basketball, I knew that I wanted to be 21. I think actually my freshman year, someone else had it, and so I was stuck with 20. And then my sophomore year, I snagged 21, and I wore that for the next 3 years. But
and then
yeah,
it continued after you, right? It continued, and then Dom wore it,
Yeah.
and then Matt
I
Deshae
think
wore it.
Dom wore it. Yeah, absolutely. There was definitely a lineage in that number, that jersey. But yeah, I definitely chose 21 based off of that.
So that senior year, I think you guys didn't start off too hot. I mean, you might have won a couple games, lost a couple games. When did it click for you guys that year? Because obviously you guys beat us at home towards the end of the year. They got you guys a bunch of points. When did things click for you guys that season?
Yeah, I would say probably in the middle of the season. I think we kind of came into our own. We kind of all had a good sense of what our roles were on the team. I had so the Sidwa twins they had transferred. I think they came from like North Carolina, and so they were like a huge boost. So they were both like 6'1", 6'2", and then at that time in high school I was 6 feet, 6'1", and Josh was a little taller. He was like 6'3", and Alan. I don't think Alan definitely wasn't as tall as he is now, but I would say that we were all 6 feet or taller in the starting five, and so I definitely kind of took more of as a leadership role in terms of not by my production, but more of kind of a facilitator, because I understood Alan was a better shooter than I was. He's a better shooter now, and so my junior year, were all the kind of out of bounds plays that were usually run for me were now kind of being run for Alan. I might get one here or there, and the Sidwa twins, who could usually stroke it from outside, usually got a couple here and there. But I definitely, in terms of the offense, I was probably facilitating a little bit more than I had done in the previous year or two. So I think when everyone kind of understood their role on the team a little bit better, we started to click a little bit more. And then my goal and my dream, just ever since the first time I stepped foot in the auditorium, was to go and play in the auditorium, come running through the doors as the pep bands were playing, and have the crowds on both sides of you, like massive crowds, bigger than we'd ever played in front of before. And so when I kind of realize that we could do big things and kind of get to the auditorium, that was definitely the dream was becoming a little bit more of a reality, and it ended up working out well. We played St. Dom's. I think it was St. Dom's in the first round, and we ended up beating them. And then we were stuck playing Dexter the next round. And we always had the crappiest times. I mean, we're traveling from 4 hours away, and they'd give us like a 9 o'clock in the morning game. And so we played Dexter, and they had Chris Rabideau, big guy. He was their star player for sure. And but we came out firing. I hit a jumper from the free throw, and then the next time down, I hit a three-pointer. We were up 5-0 on them, and they were kind of like, "Whoa, they're here for real." And then the game changed. I'll never forget kind of how things played out. I feel like I lost control of the game in terms of facilitating. I didn't see much of the ball again. I felt like I didn't get as many opportunities, and I think they kind of made some adjustments defensively, and it kind of threw us for a loop because we came out firing. I think actually even it was either Mark or Kenny came out after and hit another three shortly after, and we were up like 8-2 early on. Like, we were feeling it, and like I said, the game changed, and they made some adjustments defensively, and we started kind of falling apart. But they were the number one seed. I mean, they were a good team that year. I think they actually might have won it that year.
It's not a bad way to end the high school career, though. Like, on both the soccer field, get into a state championship, and then on the basketball court, get into the Bangor Auditorium. Like, it's not a bad way to go out right there.
Yeah, for sure. It was. I mean, I remember, like, when I was growing up, like, for soccer-wise, the men's team was pretty good, but the girls' team, they were winning state championship after state championship under Ed Marshall, and like going down to states to watch their games, like the atmosphere there, like that was crazy and awesome and intense. And I always remember saying I want to get there one day. And so to do that my senior year, and then to kind of fulfill the dream of playing in the auditorium before it got torn down and rebuilt, was kind of a good way to cap off high school career.
Absolutely.
For sure.
So we got a couple segments to get to here, but before we do that, you mentioned the national championship in college. Real quick, just let everyone know where you went to for college and the national championship you're speaking of.
Yeah, so I went to Franklin Pierce University in Rindge, New Hampshire. It's small Division II school in rural New Hampshire. And my freshman year, I redshirted. Actually, the reason I didn't really get recruited anywhere. I played in the senior game and had a couple colleges come see me, but nothing serious. I kind of had my eye set on Franklin Pierce. Robbie Krul, the guy, the one that had done all the Dutch soccer camps, him and his wife actually both played at Franklin Pierce. His wife won a national championship there in the late 90s, early mid-90s. And he played there as well for 4 years, and so I kind of had an in, and so he still knew the coach there. I actually reached out to the coach and sent him an email saying I was interested in playing, and I mean, there wasn't much for recruiting outside of some smaller schools in Maine, and so I kind of took it upon myself, and he let me come down, and I had kind of like a tryout, a practice with the team during their spring season, and he invited me back to preseason. So freshman year, preseason, mid-August, I head down to campus, and we start preseason. That was kind of a whirlwind. We start 3 days, working from 6 to 7, just running, and then 8 to 10 with some more drill work, and then 3 to 5 where we were doing a lot of ball work and passing and things like that. And so that was a huge change. And I ended up redshirting my freshman year, which was a little bit of a disappointment with me, but I was paying my dues and still practicing and things like that. So that was a good experience. And then sophomore year, the summer between my freshman and sophomore year, I played down in Southern Maine in a men's league, and that actually kept me in shape, and it kind of kept me in soccer shape. So I came back my sophomore year, and I was flying, and I was expecting to make a little bit of a rift in the starting lineup, or at least even just play a little bit more, get in some games a little bit more. And so I ended up I didn't start, but I was getting some playing time, and we actually had lost in the national championship my freshman year. So when we came back my sophomore year, like, there was a lot of guys coming back. We got new recruits from overseas, and so we were coming off a great season, so our expectations were pretty high, so things were pretty intense when it came to practices and things like that. And we ended up losing, I think, in the regional finals. And my junior year, again, I played in the men's league during the summer, so I kind of stayed in shape. And preseason comes along, and I'm starting to practice with the first team, and then things kind of shaped out a little bit differently, where I wasn't scholarship, so a lot of the players that were playing, that my teammates were scholarship players, and so they definitely got. I felt like they got first go at things because they were getting paid to play. So he wanted to make sure he was using them. But I played a little bit more my junior year, and we went back down to the national semifinal, which was in Orange Beach, Alabama, and we won the semifinal game. And we get to the final a couple days later, and it's 0-0. We have like 8 minutes left in the game, and one of the strikers on my team, he was this British guy, and he was just like a cheeky bastard. Like, he'd put it through your legs and kind of float it over your head like any way that he can. And he came down the right wing and just saw the goalie off his line and chipped it over his head. And so we scored with 8 minutes left in the game. We were up 1. And like the last 8 minutes of the game were the longest eight minutes of our lives. And we ended up holding them off and won the national championship that year, my junior year.
Not a bad way. Not a bad way to culminate the athletic career right there.
Yeah, it was good. It was an awesome experience. My senior year, I actually I was named captain during the spring season, and I kind of went home that summer, and I was like, I don't want to play anymore. I'm kind of tired of it. It was getting a little bit more of a job rather than a passion, and so I didn't even play my senior year. I kind of stepped aside, and I went out on top.
Not a bad way to go. It's not a bad way to go at all. Not too many people can say that, and a national championship on top of that. So
yeah.
We're gonna get to a couple of our segments here.
If you're looking for the hard-hitting journalistic questions, you're in the wrong place. It's Ethan Asks Big Time Questions on Big Time, the podcast.
We got a couple segments that everyone knows and loves. The first one we're going to get to is called Ethan Asks Big Time Questions on Big Time, the podcast. Our buddy Ethan Raymond has got a series of questions for you. Ethan, what is your first question?
On this edition of Ethan Asks Big Time Questions. So, Myles, I know from Fort Kent growing up, we had, my generation had Lon Berthium, Ryan Martin, and those guys to look up to for sports idols from our town. You were, I think, might have graduated same year as me, maybe the year after. So, who did you idolize from Madawaska growing up? Who might you have tried to build your basketball and soccer style off of? Who was the guy for you?
question. I would have to say it would probably be a little bit different for each sport, but definitely Andrew Clavette for basketball, and probably Ben Marshall for soccer. I remember watching Ben when I was a kid, and he was just doing all this fancy stuff with his feet and rainbowing over guys during the game, and I just was kind of in awe of his talent. And so I would say definitely those guys were ones that were there before me that I definitely looked up to and kind of aspired to be like.
Good choices right there. All right, last question from Ethan. Ethan, what do you got?
If you could relive one moment from your sports career, high school, college, whatever it might be, what would that moment be? And we'll do a second part. We'll go basketball. Is there one person that you'd like to call out from your career to play a one-on-one against, maybe to hash out some beef, settle some differences, and see who might come out on top? Who would that be?
So the toughest loss, I think we know which one that one is.
Definitely I'd relive that state championship game. In terms of who I'd want to play one-on-one, I can honestly say I didn't really hate anyone or despise anyone. I was kind of like I said, basketball to me was kind of like just something I did for fun. I was competitive, so I liked to play it. So there wasn't really anyone that I can pinpoint that I'd want to go back and kind of hash it out on the court.
Safe answer right there.
Yeah.
All right, our other segment, Big Bro Charlito. Charles wonders.
From the land of Donaire and Poutine, it's time to sort fact from fiction. Live on location, it's Charlito Wonders. On Big Time, the podcast.
We'll see what Charlie is wondering for Myles here.
Yo, Myles, what up, man? It's Charlito out here in Halifax. Yeah, I'm just wondering, you played in some big-time games growing up. Bigger thrill for you, lacing up the cleats to play forehand under the lights, or lacing them up in the summertime and playing with Mark Ross and all at CPT. That dude was intense, so I'm sure you have to bring your A game each and every game you stepped on the field with that guy. Yeah, man, hope life's good. Take it easy, brother.
Another good question.
Great question. Mark definitely had some good summer league games, that's for sure, in the Field of Dreams. But definitely, hands down, lacing up the cleats to play forehand under the lights. I mean, and honestly, either home or away, either one was a massive game. I enjoyed playing away just as much as I did home because, I mean, fall soccer in Northern Maine, you can't get much better than that.
Yeah, exactly. That's our Friday Night Lights right there. That's what I always tell people that aren't from around here.
Exactly.
It's our Friday Night Lights.
Yeah.
I hope everyone had a good time, because things are going to get serious for a moment. It's time to talk death on Big Time, the podcast.
All right, our last segment of the pod here, it's the serious question. It's called When You Die, What Jersey Do You Want to Be Buried In? So you got some good choices here. You got the national championship jersey from college. You got the Madawaska Owl Blue from the basketball and soccer court or soccer field. Which one means the most to you? Which one do you take with you to the grave?
That's a good question. Honestly, our soccer jerseys were hideous. I hated them, so I wouldn't want to get buried in that. We had awful soccer jerseys. The jersey that I liked the best was our home jerseys for basketball. Actually, it was all through high school. I think I was the only one that liked them, and I don't know why everyone else hated them, but I liked them the best. And so I'd probably go with that 21 home jersey from basketball.
You and Drew might have to fight that out as to who gets to bring it to the grave.
Yeah.
I think you might pick
that one. He can have the away.
Yeah.
He can have the away.
Good choice. All right, so we're about to get up out of here, Myles. Is there anything you want to say before we get up out of here? Anything you want to get off your chest? Anything you want to clear? Anything you want to say at all before we get up out of here?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you having me on. This has been great. It's great to relive all these memories from high school and growing up, and helps to have some other people around to kind of to re-jog your memory on how things went. But those were the good old days, really. And I look forward to kind of living vicariously through future little ones of me, and hopefully they can have some of those same experiences that I had, because honestly, those were some of the best days of my life.
Absolutely. Want to thank Myles for coming through on Big Time, Madawaska all the way through on this week's episode of the podcast. So thank you to Myles. Make sure you guys are going out there and checking out all of our previous episodes on iTunes, on Spotify, on YouTube. Make sure you're checking out Big Time Classics on YouTube. Make sure you are checking us out on social media, Instagram, Big Time the Podcast, all kinds of stuff out there. Make sure you're keeping up with the latest stuff. For this week's episode, that is it. I'll see you next time.